Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. Today's episode is sponsored by my new free quiz, Unlock the Best Way to Use Chatbots in Your Teaching. This quick 5-question quiz will help you figure out the best way to use AI this school year. Find out if AI can support your instructional planning and help you tackle your to-do list. Everyone who takes the quiz will also get a free ebook. Head to classtechtips.com/quiz to find my new quiz. Unlock the best way to use chatbots in your teaching. That's classtechtips.com/quiz. This week's episode is titled Tips for Going to an Education Conference. And if you are attending any conferences, big or small, this school year, I have got some of my favorite tips for you. It's been more than a decade of attending and presenting at conferences for me. If you're listening to this when it goes live at the end of March, well, I was just in Kentucky for a conference last week for KISTI, their fantastic state conference, also my 50th state that I visited. So Kentucky was the last one and just added that to the list. And then earlier this year, I was at a librarians state conference in New York. I was at one in Texas, TCEA, Florida, FETC. So if you scroll through the calendar on my events page, you'll see hundreds of events from the past decade. Now, whether it's virtual or in person, there are so many benefits of attending a conference, and going to events like this has taken me to dozens of states and even a couple different countries outside of the US. It can really be an exhilarating, inspiring experience when you have the opportunity to learn, network, and grow professionally. But if you've been to a conference, you know that the hustle and bustle of a conference day can also be exhausting and overwhelming if you're not properly prepared. So if you are a seasoned conference goer, you might have some favorite tips to share, just like I will share in today's episode. Or if it's your first time going to a conference this year, I've got you covered. So in today's episode, I'm going to share 7 tips to help you make the most of any conference adventure, big or small. I hope that these tips will help you stay comfortable and energized and really primed to soak up the valuable information you can get from an education conference. So let's go ahead and dive into the list. First up is purse snacks. At least that's what I call it. On busy conference days, I often find myself searching for something to eat. And sometimes it's just really hard in between conference sessions to find a spot for a quality, quick bite, or, I'm just not happy with the options. And I often joke about my purse snacks, although they're usually in my small bag or backpack. I have friends in my life who will sometimes poke fun. Just a few weeks ago, I got a text from someone and I replied with a picture of my purse, which included an applesauce pouch in it. So if you find me at a conference, you're likely to find some of these snacks in my bag. Breakfast bars. Right now, I'm really loving the breakfast bars from 88 Acres. I like the chocolate chip one a lot, or the chocolatey one a lot. I really like olive snack packs since you don't have to refrigerate them. I usually grab a whole bunch when I'm on a Trader Joe's run. I like fruit strips. They kind of remind me of a healthier version of fruit roll-up. These are tasty and they can take up very little room. And like those applesauce packages I mentioned, even though our pouches, they can look a little silly, but I'm always happy when I remember that I've got one in my bag, and I usually don't have any trouble even bringing them through airport security. If I pop a couple in my backpack, that'll last me a few days at a conference. So purse snacks are first on the list, and I'll link out to some of my favorites. That way you can see pictures of things that go in each of these categories, including my go-to breakfast bars. Number 2 on the list is chargers. Now, charging all of my devices before I leave my home or hotel room, wherever I'm going to a conference, well, that is a must. But of course, if it's a long day or maybe I'm not as charged as I should be, I want to be prepared for anything. So I usually throw a wall charger in my phone, for my phone and my laptop, and a portable charger in my bag. I'll link out to the external battery pack, the little portable charger I've been using for, maybe 2 years or so now. I love it. And it's even something I've given as holiday presents because it's become such a part of my routine. Number 3 is business cards. Now, it might feel a little bit old school to have business cards on hand. And if you are working for a school or organization that doesn't automatically give you business cards, it may be worth spending some time getting a couple, from a favorite spot. There's a few different places you can either create or order business cards from, everything from Canva to Vistaprint. You could Google some options and find some low-cost choices. So if I'm at a conference that has a badge that I'm wearing around my neck in a plastic cover, sometimes it's just the paper, but if it's in a plastic cover, I'll tuck a couple even into my name tag. That way I don't have to go searching for them in my bag. I can easily grab one and give it to someone if I want to continue the conversation. So if I get cards from people, one of my tips is to tuck them all in the same spot. Easier said than done if you're moving on a busy expo hall floor at a conference, but if you can even put them into, your name badge tag, that plastic cover, that can just be a great place to keep them all. You might also decide that as soon as someone hands it to you, you snap a picture just in case you lose it or misplace it. And then what I typically do, especially for big events, is I'll put a little reminder on my calendar, just like a 20-minute calendar reminder to follow up with anyone that I met for, a few days after the conference. So that's something that can be helpful. Business cards might feel old school, but they can still come in handy. Next up is a hydration plan. It's easy to lose track of time during a conference and realize you have drank a lot less water than you do on a typical day. I love an extra small Nalgene. The big ones are great, but a small one doesn't take up too much space or weigh down my bag, and I can refill it as much as I want to. I also tend to carry some of my favorite tea bags. I'm a big tea drinker with me at a conference. That way, if I'm somewhere and maybe I can get a cup of hot water, I don't have to worry about choosing a tea bag from a bin of options where I might not know how much caffeine is in it, or it just might not be my favorite kind. And that way I can pop in my own tea bag. Sometimes I'll also throw into my bag some liquid IV or emergency packets with a little extra boost of vitamins. This can be a great choice, especially if you're on the run or sometimes feel a little run down when you are at an event. Now, another tip or thing to pack for an education conference is a sleep mask. Now, I don't use a sleeping mask all the time. I know some people have it as part of their nightly routine, but for traveling, it's something I really find useful on an airplane, and also as an option if I'm not sleeping too great in a hotel room. As I'm sure you can imagine, if you followed along with the blog or podcast, I have spent hundreds of nights in hotel rooms, and I still find that a sleep mask can make an extra difference in staying comfortable. So I'll link out to one that's a low-cost one I snagged off Amazon that I use all the time. Next on my tips or my list of things to pack is some hand lotion. Kind of like that hydration plan, I find that conference centers are often really heavy on the air circulation. This can just make it really dry, and whether you have a favorite hand lotion, I sometimes will go for like an Aquaphor really thick hand lotion just so I have something in my bag when I'm feeling a little extra dry. It could be helpful. There's plenty of travel size options to choose from. That's just the one I tend to go to. I'll link out some options for you when you're listening to this episode in the show notes. Now, last on my list, so far we've talked about some purse snacks, chargers, business cards, having a hydration plan, a sleep mask, and some hand lotion. Well, last on my list is comfy shoes. And sometimes at a conference, I throw an extra pair of shoes or sandals in my bag, particularly if I know it's going to be a long day. So having comfortable shoes is important. If you've seen me out and about at a conference this past year or so, you might have seen me in a pair of sneakers or loafers. I am 5 feet 2 inches, and I do like having some extra height of wearing heels if I'm standing up on a stage, but sometimes I'll just switch it out so that most of the day at a conference, you can find me in comfier shoes running from one spot to the next or hanging out a bit in between sessions. So these are some of my essential items. If you were with me in Kentucky last week, I probably had all of the above taken care of on that trip. And if you see me on the road on the next few months, I probably have them with me too. If I'm attending a virtual event, there's usually a combination of things like comfy slippers and still a nice cup of water or tea next to me at my desk. But if you're heading out to a conference this year, I hope these tips will be helpful for you, from staying hydrated and energized during a long day, right? Or just being ready to have a conversation with some extra business cards, right? This is something you might put into practice too. And one bonus tip I'll add to the list is to bring layers. I always find it's colder or warmer than I would like to be in a conference space, and I'm happy that I've got an extra cardigan or something with me just in case it's a little bit chilly. So conferences are great ways to expand your knowledge, connect with fellow educators, and gain new ideas. I always put a lot of my events on my calendar on my website. So if you're at classtechtips.com, my blog, you can just click on the Work with Monica button, and that'll show you my whole events page towards the bottom of the page. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Pack essentials like portable chargers, business cards, and comfy shoes. Stay refreshed and focused with snacks, water, and a sleep mask for optimal energy. Build your professional network by exchanging business cards and connecting on social media. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from today's episode by heading to classtechtips.com and finding number 312. And of course, if there's a tip I should add to this list, send me a message. You can either reply to one of my Monday newsletters, or you can send a message on Instagram and I will get right back to you. Today's episode is sponsored by my new free quiz, Unlock the Best Way to Use Chatbots in Your Teaching. This quick 5-question quiz will help you figure out the best way to use AI this school year. Find out if AI can support your instructional planning and help you tackle your to-do list. Everyone who takes the quiz will also get a free ebook. Head to classtechtips.com/quiz to find my new quiz. Unlock the best way to use chatbots in your teaching. That's classtechtips.com/quiz. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.